Alrighty, we are now live and in Blender. Alright everyone, hello, my name is Majid McCord. I am a super senior at Cal State Fullerton in the CAGA program. So today I was going to go over how to do procedural shading in Blender, and well, once you learn how to do this stuff in one program, you can pretty much do it in every program because the language is pretty much the same. They might change the title of the node to something slightly different. Like for example, here you have Principal BSDF, which is basically a combination of like all your diffuse, specular, roughness, and all that. And other programs like in Maya, it'd be called your AI standard surface, and it'd come with all these settings under it. I believe in Unreal, it's pre-built into as your first node, and all you do is connect nodes to that master node, and then you have your output so you can see what it looks like in the viewport. So what I have here, I modeled a quick little object, and this is for a game I'm making right now. But so I modeled it real quick, and here in solid mode, if you press Z, go to the right in solid mode, you can see everything as you would see in your own. In fact, let me just open up a new page here. Not save that. So this is what your scene should look like. If you guys have, I think, Blender 3.01 here at the bottom right. I think 3.1 might be out right now. I'm not too sure, but if you downloaded that, it shouldn't look too different. If you pick like the dark theme and I think my space bar is a little different than you guys. I did space for search instead of space for play. Anyway, so here at the bottom, I'd bring this up. Over here at the top left, I'd click that, and we'd go to the shader editor, and here's where all your shader nodes are. And shader nodes are basically the way light plays with your material. It's just how you perceive it in real time, and I think automatically Blender puts you into up here at on the right here. You got render properties, and if you click that little symbol, you see the render engine set to Eevee, which is a very fast real-time renderer. Once you go up with Z, if you press and hold, I think you press and hold Z, and you go up to rendered, and this is your rendered view. And obviously you have a light right here pre-built in, so if I just delete that, no light. Camera, select it, X, delete. That's how I delete quickly. Excuse me. So yeah, so this is your little cube here, and if I hit Shift A, Shift A, you have your creation, your mesh creator, or other things as well. But I'm gonna put in a light, so I'm gonna go down here to light. I'm gonna add a sunlight, and it's inside the box. So if you just press, it's automatically selected since it's orange highlighted. So I'd click and drag over it, select, bring that over, press G to move. I'm just gonna move it over here. Doesn't matter where it is. Rotate it just a little bit by pressing R. And there we go. So, and this cube has like an automatic shader material here assigned to it. But if you actually hit the materials property, you can see it here on the right side. It's just the base material for the cube. And you can always click in here and rename it. So we're going to call it the cube material. And you can already see changes to this cube when you change down here in this layout or in this viewport. So if I just change the color, see, darkens, brightens, change colors. And then if you change the metallic is always 0 or 1. If you guys ever heard about metallic being in between 0 and 1, it's just not right. It's never that way in real life. So it's always either 1 for it's being fully metallic, or it's 0. If you did in between, you're basically doing the same thing as making it 1 and changing roughness. That's what in between is doing, but at a very, very small sample rate. So we're just gonna, let's put that metallic. You can see it change from non-metallic to metallic. If you want plastics, you do like non-metallic and you hit roughness all the way to the bottom, and now we have plastic, but you can't really see that. So let me bring in a different mesh object so you can see it better. I'm gonna delete the cube. I'm going to create a sphere, UV sphere. And it's already, you can see the polygons on it. So what I'm going to do is I want to smoothen this. So I want to right click while it's selected, right click and shade smooth. And now it's smooth. So now we can see how the light spreads across the surface of this sphere. So if I select it, it doesn't have a material attached to it yet. So you have to click over here, this little drop down menu for materials that you have made already. And there's our cube one we had earlier. So I'm gonna click that. Let's name this sphere. So now if I played with the roughness, actually it's already 0. You see that little white dot right there? See that little white dot? That means it's fully plastic, very, very shiny plastic. So if we up this roughness, you'll see it spread. Now it's more normal plastic, and then now it's like concrete, full roughness, kind of like concrete. So we're gonna bring that down to 4.5. Let's up the metal. So here's our metal. If you make it 0, it's like a mirror, like literally a mirror. And if you up the roughness, the metal spreads the light, gets more rough. And now it's more like actually I don't know what this metal looks like. Anyway, so that's how you mess with this shader or this node here. And so we're just gonna do a couple things with this thing. So let me go over what these do. You have your subsurface. If you've taken one of Andy's classes for his lighting composition, you would have learned how the subsurface works. It's basically like a layer on top of your main color, your base color, that like mixes another color with it and like gives it kind of like well, let me just show you. So it's white right now. I'm just gonna make it full white. I'm gonna add it to this and watch what happens. Oh, that didn't work. It's because it's metal. Let's make this a more noticeable color. Oh, it is that. Okay, because it was metal, I think. Yeah, okay, there we go. So you're adding white onto your base color. And it's turning it not fully white. Like, you can see some discoloration here on the sides. It's just mixing it on top of the purple. And I think if I change purple, you'll see that color change as well. So let's see. Oh no, it does make it fully white. Interesting. So it just completely overtakes it. So we'll just put it at like point A, and you can see the color there now with the white overtaking it. And you can change this one too. And change this with it. So that's how that works as subsurface. But we're going to do a few more advanced things today that shows you how truly powerful procedural shading can be. So so this is your base node, right? And everything that plugs into this and comes out of this eventually creates something very unique that you are trying to go for. Now, usually when you're trying to make something new for procedural shading, if you have something in mind, like I want to make fire, or I want to make something look like ice, or I want to make a crystal. You know, if you're trying to go for a specific kind of material or a look for your object, that's when it gets tricky. And that's what I tried to achieve in my cubes material creation project. So I think I'm gonna switch over to that just to show you examples of how I went about doing that. And so I'm gonna open it up. I'm going to go to my Blender file, cubes, open. Okay, so here we have my scene set up for the cubes. It's not this project was not made specifically to be streamed and taught, but I think just showcasing one cube or maybe making another in addition to it is going to be enough to show you guys what I mean by procedural shading. So the scene you're looking at right now is a bit hectic. You're not going to understand any of this if you're a first-time Blender user. So let me go over what you're seeing real quick. We'll start from the outer portion here. So this thing here with this little guy and that guy, these three objects here, in fact I have two of those guys right there. These are your light reflection and capture and baking. So what that means is this plays a role in how light bounces around certain materials within that sphere. And then this one here, I have two of them. These are your, if I have to go here to click add, light probing. All right, so those are your, I think your reflection planes. And that basically, based on the angle of your camera and where they're positioned, I have them positioned right where the floor is so that they capture the reflections on the floor from the cube. So if a cube has like an emission, or if light's hitting the cube from out here, and it's bouncing off the cube onto the floor, these guys reflection planes capture that so that you can bake the scene. And baking is basically like, you know, preloading the lighting and how it works, and so that you don't have to constantly have your computer update how the light is playing with the scene. And then this guy right here is an irradiance volume. This guy is basically how light bounces in your scene. So every point is on this, and this inside this box is where light hits and bounces and spreads from that point. And you can change that by, if you wanted to add this into your scene, you go to Shift A to add, go down to light probe, and it's your irradiance volume right there. And originally it would look like this. All you have to do is press S, size it up, fit your scene, SZ, SX, SY. And once it fits your scene, you can then, I have it fit in my scene, this one. And I'd go down to the right here, you'd see this little green like box option. Click that, and you'll see the settings for the irradiance volume box. Change these based on how complex your scene is. Obviously, you don't want to go too high with the amount of dots or the points inside your box, because it does eat up a lot of your, I think, graphics card or RAM. I'm not sure, probably both. And so it takes time to bake the more you have, and sometimes it may crash your system if it's too much. So these are my settings if you wanted to copy those. And then we have my plane floor. This is my floor. But I believe it has a material attached to it right now. Yes, it's a very crazy material. Don't even worry about that right now. And then we have our light. This is an area light I have turned on right now. If I press Shift A, go to light, there's your area light. Excuse me. There's your area light. I think that's, you have your camera there. In case you wanted to position your camera in a specific way, press 0 to go into your camera. And you can do Shift tilde, and you can fly around in your camera like WASD. And if you hold down Shift, you're like flying faster. So that's really cool about Blender. And you can go up with E, down with Q. So that's really cool. And if you wanted to cancel that, just right click. But if you wanted to actually put it in the way you wanted it and confirm the view, just left click, and then your camera's there. But I didn't want to do that, so Control C. And then there's my cube. I just made a very, very simple cube. If I go into edit mode with tab, there it is. I just beveled the edges once, I think twice. To bevel, if you just select an edge, if you press 2, 1 is for vertex mode, so you can select the individual vertices. 2 is for lines or edges, and 3 is for faces. So if you have just a regular cube, I just literally press 3, select everything with A, and then Control B to bevel everything. And I just bevel it. You can use your mouse scroll wheel to bevel it multiple times. But I'm just going to bevel it once and then drag and left click to confirm your selection. And that's how I got this little bevel here on all my edges. And that's why it looks kind of smooth. Obviously I did a shade smooth, so I right-click the box in, not edit mode, but in object mode. You can do it in edit mode. If you're in edit mode and you select all the faces, right-click, and I believe it is shade smooth here. But if you're in object mode, hit tab and go in object mode, you can right-click, shade smooth here. If it's shade flat, you'll actually see the edges. Shade smooth blends in. If it looks a little weird, like like there's a very weird like artifact or black light hitting one edge, I believe you have to go down to this button here, the object data properties. Looks like a green triangle, and if you go to normals, in auto check, click this checkbox here for auto smoothing. It should be at 30 degrees, but just click it, and I think I can see a difference if I do this right now for you guys. Uncheck, and then check. So that's what that does. It's very useful, this little tool here, for later on when you're trying to properly color or light your objects that are very intricate or complex in design. But yeah. Okay, and then, so I think these icons here represent everything for my lighting. Now, these don't necessarily have to be in your scene. It's just for baking light. And you can see how light plays in the scene without baking it. It's just gonna constantly update as you pan around your scene. So if you're just in here in this mode, and if I pan around like this, or let me just go into render mode so we can see what we see. So at the bottom here, it's loading the shaders at 33%, so I gotta let it load. It'll take a couple seconds. It has a lot of shaders in here. Okay, I think I'm good. Okay, cool. So as you can see, as I move around my screen, if I hold Shift, middle mouse click, I can pan around. But you can see my screen is kind of like updating itself in terms of render. And so if I move it around, you see it very choppy, grainy. And then it updates. If I zoom in, it also grains and then updates. And that's for the lighting. But if you did my setup, so I'm going to hit Z, go to solid mode. If you did this lighting setup here, that means the way the light plays with the floor will not change. It'll always be the same, so that your computer does not have to re-render that too often. Obviously, if you're changing other things, like the material of the cube itself, that's going to update itself, but the floor would not change with the lighting unless you change the material of the floor too. Okay, so now let's get into the cubes and the material shaders. So we're gonna put this up here in case you didn't know how to get there. I had an extra outline here. If you don't have an extra viewer port here and you want to open one up, all you do is come down to the left corner of any of your viewports, or the right corner, or the top right corner. You should see this little plus sign appear, like right before you touch the corner. And you can click and drag in any direction, literally any direction. And you will get all your viewports that you want. And you can change them independently. And you close and open them the same way. Blender used to be very finicky about the way it closes the ones. It usually would have been, if this was my setup, I would only be allowed to close the top one before I can close the bottom one. But now we can go in any direction we want, which is amazing. This is a very new update they put in. So anyway, yeah, topic there. So let's take a look at, let's see, let's start with our floor. So I'm gonna just bring this master node here that we talked about earlier. I'm going to disconnect this one. And so the only thing this thing is plugged into right now, as you can see, it's going from out of the BSDF, the output, into the input for the material. And so you'll see it's just a flat plane with, I believe it's a low gray color, fully metallic, roughness at 0.25. So it is a bit shiny. And so this is the cool thing about procedural shading. So if I wanted this plane to look like bricks, if I wanted a brick layout of floor, what I would do is, we can add in a texture node. So if you hit Shift A, and here we have a list of all the nodes that are in this in Blender. And if you go down to texture, you have a list of all your textures. So I use these a lot to change the shape and look of how like emissions and displacements and and color look on your materials. So let's just do something cool. I'm gonna bring in a brick texture. So here's your brick texture. Left click to place it down. And here's my principled shader, which is automatic. And I'm going to push these aside over here for now. All right. Now, important thing you guys should do, which is really, really cool about Blender, it's already built in, and everyone that uses Blender uses this. If you really quickly go to, I believe it is Edit, go down to Preferences, and box will open up. You're going to go to Add-ons, and you're going to type in the search bar, Node Wrangler. This little thing is neat because it helps you quickly use shortcuts inside of the shader editor. And so just check that on, and you can close. I don't think there's a save button anymore. It just automatically knows that it's on. So we're going to check that, exit, and now you have it active so that when we use it, I'll tell you how it's used. So, okay, so back to our shader here. So this is our floor. And if this grid floor, you see all these squares, these white squares, and then the two green lines for the X and Y, if that gets in your way and you want to really just see your material itself with nothing getting in your screen, and so you can focus on the details, up the top right here, if you click this Show Overlay button, this little blue double circle thing, it'll turn it all off so you can just see your material. All right? In case you don't have a screen like mine right now, and if you're wanting to follow along and literally do exactly what I'm doing, I apologize for not having done this before previously. Let me go back to this mode here, solid mode. And what I did was basically, let's have a new scene. So I'm going to hit Shift-C to put my cursor in the center. I'm going to make a plane. I'm going to hit M and make a new collection for this plane. And we're going to call this test scene. All right, now that we're in our test scene over there, that plane's in it. On the right here on the outliner, I'm just going to check off our, turn that off. I'm just going to turn that off. And I think I'm going to keep all these guys right here. Put that in my test scene. So I hit M. I select all of them. I left click drag, hit M, put them in the test scene. So now they're in the test scene. And let's put my light, area light, in the test scene. And then I'm going to select my plane. I'm going to size it up. I'm going to hit S and then press 8. No, I want more than that. S12. Yeah, S12 is good. Yeah, so 12 times the size. I'm going to enter edit mode, pressing tab, and while I have the face selected, so 3, and then click the face, I'm going to hit E to extrude. I'm just going to extrude a little bit. Doesn't matter how much. I just want it to look like a plain box, but boxed up. Okay, cool. So we have my plane, and I'm going to go down to materials here, make new. I'm going to call this one plane. And in here, it should pop up somewhere. There it is. I'm just really far away from it. And I think, yeah, okay. So I'm going to zoom into that one. Okay, so if I go into rendered mode, okay, there's my plane. And if I press 0, there's my camera. And so I'm going to click, oh, my camera's not in here. So I need to put my camera in here. So I'm going to select my camera. And I'm going to hit M, test scene for the camera, and turn that off again. Okay, so there's my camera. Here's my my light setup for if I wanted to bake. You don't have to do this. These are not important right now. This is just for me to show you later. You just have a camera, a light, and your plane. And what is that little guy? That's a little point light I have there. I'm just gonna delete that. Okay. So again, I was gonna turn off the overlays here, and we're just gonna look at our plane as is. With this setup here. Take that off of volume, don't know why that's there. So yeah, Shift A, we're going to add in our brick. You can search it up and type in brick, and there's our brick texture. And so if I just plug in brick for the surface, you're going to see a black and white brick layout. I mean, this is basically what this is looking like. This is how this is designed. And you can mess with the scale, increase the amount of bricks we want, change the mortar size, And if you hold shift, you can do it at a slower rate. Because it only goes to like, I think it goes, yeah, 0 to 1.25. So you can do it really quick just by left clicking. But if you hold shift, you can go through it slower. We got smoothing, biasness, and you know the rest of these. It just changes the numbers and it changes the look of the bricks. And so this doesn't look right because the black is just way too black, and I don't want it just being these white gray colors. I want to edit this a lot more. So what you would do is we had it do Shift A, we get a mix shader. So we type in search bar mix shader right there. Connect that, drop it on top, it'll automatically connect, and we're going to drag out of this, plug it in, doesn't matter top or bottom. Well, it does matter if it's the top or bottom. That's when we plug in something to the factor, and it determines how the brick shader plays with the principled shader. So now that we have a brick connected to our principled, and if we change this, like if we want the bricks to be metallic, let's just make it metallic. So now the bricks are metallic, and if we just change the roughness, it looks very unreal. You're actually seeing below inside of it, which is hilarious. So I don't like that. I don't want to see below or in through it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the brick texture be the factor of our shader. Now we have something a bit more controllable. So this is metallic brick now, and let's say I don't want it metallic. Let's bring this down to 0. Let's bring the roughness up a little bit. Okay, that's cool. That's good. And you can see it working properly there. Okay. And if you change the colors here, it changes the colors of your bricks. So there's our brick. But it's too smooth. So bricks are usually supposed to, pop out. You'll see the grooves and the indentations. And we want to make it look like actual bricks, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to take this brick texture, take the color, and we're going to plug it into the displacement output. Watch what happens. We get displacement. So now light plays with the edges of the bricks to show that it does have depth. However, the light's coming from in front of us, but I'm seeing highlights on the other side here. So that means the light's inverted, or the way it's working is inverted. So I think I have to do an invert. So this is how I go about doing shaders. I always see something that's not right, or something I'm trying to go for, and I play around with different shaders or different nodes in the shader editor to see if it achieves what I'm looking for. So there we go. I flipped it. So watch. 0 factor. The light highlights on the south side of the brick in respective to our view. Put a 1 there. Bam. The light's coming from the north side, where it's actually correct because the light's over there. There we go. We fixed our lighting issue. Now let's fix our depth amount. So I believe if I just hit, I'm going to do a Shift A. I'm going to add in a color ramp. So I'm just going to type in ramp. There's our color ramp. And I want to plug it into the displacement line here after invert. And here I believe if I change this 0 to 1 factor, black to white, I'm not seeing much of a change. Oh, I'm seeing something there. So it's getting rid of my depth when I bring the white in closer to the black. So the one value controls our strength of depth. That's fine. I'm going to leave that as is for now. All right, so what I want to do next is I want to add some noise. I want to see like the actual texture of brick. Brick has a lot of noise to it. You see a lot of grain on brick. So what we're going to do is I'm going to mix a shader, Control or Shift D to make another one to duplicate it. I'm going to mix one shader, which is our brick principle, these two here. I'm going to mix it with another one. So we're going to plug that in here. And with this one, I'm going to Shift A, I'm going to go to Texture. I'm going to add in some noise. And there's some noise right there. And with this one, we're going to plug in our color or factor. It does change what it looks like. So let me show you. I think this will be a good idea or a good example. So if I plug in factor to factor, let's wait for it to update. Oh, it changed the the coloring. So you see the discoloration. So if let me just up the detail here, and then let me up the scale. Okay. So you guys see the discoloration here, and if I plugged in the color instead, it does change. Barely, but there is a slight change. It doesn't matter which one you want to use. Obviously, if you have a very, very specific look, like down to the 10th, 9th, nth degree, yeah, you would determine which one you want to use. But for now, it doesn't matter to me, so I'll just use factor. And I think if I did factor to displacement, so you can mix, you can do mix shader on any of these, whether it's surface, volume, or displacement. So if I wanted to like Shift D and mix shader here, oh, I take that back. No, you cannot. I wonder why that is. Is it before? It is not. See, this is the thing about when you do shaders is you eventually learn what works and what doesn't work. And it's fun when you go about doing it and trying to figure it out. So I'm not going to worry about that for now. Okay. So I believe if I just wanted the noise to be on top of the bricks, I think I can do a mix RGBA. Is that going to work? It does work. That's cool. All right. So I did a Shift A and I typed in mix and we did RGB instead of mix shader. And that's what brought this little guy. Connected him to the color ramp. And let's see what happens if I do factor, or let's do color to color. Noise color to the bottom of the mix color. Ah, there's our noise, but it's way too strong. So I'm going to take this color ramp. I want to control this strength, right? I'm going to take this color ramp, Shift D. Oops, that's not what I had selected. Shift D on the color ramp. I'm going to plug it in to this part here between the noise and the mix. So it automatically connects. Now, your computer will slow down as the more nodes you start to connect, and that's just normal. You can change the if you go over here to render properties and you want to have your computer running a little bit faster, and in Eevee mode, if you go to your viewport here, sampling, render, viewport, and you bring this down to like a 1, now it should update quickly. This has one sample, so it'll literally render the first sample. It won't bounce light twice. It won't yeah, everything will just take one look at it and be like, okay, that's what you're looking at. And the more samples you do, it takes extra looks at it and updates it. I'll just do one just to keep it quick. And then also, if you want to go down to, I'm gonna turn off ambient occlusion. I don't know if you guys have that on. Turn off bloom. Turn off screen space. These should all be checked off for you anyway. All right, that's all gone. I think that's enough. Film transparent. If you do film and transparent, it gets rid of the background, so you don't have to see the background rendered. I think that's enough for now. Let me look at the shadows real quick. Do I have shadows somewhere? Shadows. We got soft shadows at 22K. I'm gonna just bring that down to 500 pixels. Soft shadows, that's fine. No big deal. Okay. So Eevee doesn't have too many render editing settings. It is a real-time renderer, which is very nice. It should be. It is quicker than it ever had been before. So we didn't used to have Eevee. Eevee's amazing, but the other render engine is Cycles, which makes your scene render more realistically. But this is more like stylized almost. But you can get a realistic view even using the stylized renderer. So okay. So now that we have our noise on our brick here and we have the color ramp attached to it, we can control the strength of the noise. So we're going to zoom in a little bit and we're going to play around with this node here. So I'm going to bring in the white. Let's see how it changes. All right, there we go. We're getting rid of some noise. And if we bring up our black, we're getting rid of the noise from within. See that? That's from within. This is from outside. This takes care of the contour of the noise. This takes care of the inner portions of the noise. So we can make cracks like this. Ain't that cool? That's really cool. And this isn't even geometry, guys. This is flat. If you go back to shader mode, there's nothing. It's just a flat plane. But you see it as actual geometry here, which is amazing. That's the beauty of procedural shading. You can create something completely insane from something so simple, and it's just the way the light's playing with the object or your shaders. So this isn't really how bricks look, so I'm just gonna bring that back up, bring that back down. Let's do something like upping this, up the scale of our noise. That's way too strong. Let's bring down the detail. Let's see what happens. That's too smooth. Keep the detail up. Maybe lower this all the way. Let's see what we can get, what look we can get. Four. All right, 4 is not too bad. Let's see what we can do with the light or the color ramp here. Ah, okay, I see. All right, that's okay for now. It's just a test. So we have our brick floor here. Let's see what I want to do. I don't like these grooves here being this color. I kind of want them dark, not highlighted. So I think if I went to our brick texture here, and if I change the color, I think that one is the lightest color, which is actually part of this brick too. So this is the same as that. So if I change this, I think it's going to change both of them. Let's just check. Oh, it's the other way around. If I change the black. Ah, it doesn't change both. Okay, cool. So this is just the groove. So I want it darker. There we go. Scale this up. All right, and get our brick floor. Cool. Obviously, you can do a lot more, and this was just with these nodes right here. We achieved this. Some of them were unnecessary. For example, this color ramp. If you never change the color ramp, it's not really. There's no really need to keep it. But let's see what happens if we do change it. So that's just the depth. It's getting rid of the depth. So I don't really care for it. So I'm just gonna do, I think, Control X. Yeah, Control X. So that's the use of the node wrangler. If you just do a shortcut Control X, it deletes it but keeps the connection between the other two. The look's still the same even without the color ramp, so we don't need that. It's just extra information that the computer has to process that we don't really need. As for this one, also Control X. We didn't really change that, and it should look the same still. Cool. All right. Now I'm gonna test something just to see if we can get more depth. So I'm gonna do Control Shift A, and let's go to. Actually, I'm gonna search it because I know what it's called. It's called the bump map. I think it just says bump. So we're gonna plug this in after this one into the displacement right here. Push that in there. And I think this one will allow me to change the strength of the depth. I'm not sure. Let's find out. Let's make that a 0.1. What happens? Nothing. 1, nothing. Distance, nothing happens. So you play around with this stuff and you figure out, okay, that works, that doesn't work, that's fine, I'll just move on. All right, what happened here? Plugged it into the height. Make it 10. 1. So if ever you're changing a value in one of the nodes and you can't go above whatever its default value was, you can just click it and type in any number you want, and then you can then go further with it. All right, so this didn't do anything. Let me go distance. Nothing. Let me go, oops. Plug it into strength. Nothing. Okay, so that didn't do anything. I'm just gonna Control X that. Plug that back into displacement. Okay, that was just me wanting to figure out if I can control the depth. Obviously, there is a way. I could spend more time trying to figure it out, and it's usually what I do. But I don't really care right now, so we're gonna move on to the next part. So this is your procedural shader for this brick texture on this flat plane. Now, what's really cool about when you make a procedural shader and you want to use this in your game, obviously this node setup will never be the same in another program for like Unreal Engine. You can recreate it if the Unreal Engine has the nodes that can get you this look, which I have achieved for some looks before, and I'll show you that later. But usually when you have something you like in, like, let's say in Blender, and you want to use this in Unreal, what you would do is you'd have to bake this out as a texture. So procedural shading, you get a look, right? You get a look that's completely original and organic in nature and randomized. And so it's this is what you have, right? And you want this as a texture to use in your actual game. You'd have to go through a process called baking in Blender. And what you would do is you'd make another plane. So I'm going to go solid mode, turn on my overlay. And I'm not gonna do this. I'm gonna show you exactly how I would do it, but I'm not actually gonna do it. So you'd make a plane, you'd make it the same size, bring it under it. I think it's inside of it. I'm not too sure. I don't remember. It's one or the other. It's either under it or inside it. I think it has to be the same origin point. And so once they're together, you would go to, I think you can only bake in cycles. You go to cycles, and in the render properties at the bottom here, you go to bake. There's a bake tab right here. And here, you would bake by type, and you'd see all these maps that you can bake out from Blender. A combined bake just gives you a bunch of them together, but it just takes more time because your computer has to process all those maps. But we know what this stuff is. If you don't know what this stuff is, yeah, maps are crazy. Maps are basically how... I'll just tell you what they do. Ambient occlusion controls the way light plays with, like, your shadows, and so or depth of field to light, and you'd have stronger shadows in corners versus surfaces that hit light directly. I don't know too much about shadow. I know position helps you with compositing, so that it places your image render in actual 3D space, so you can move around the 2D image, which is kind of cool. Normals are basically how your polygons are playing with light, and if the faces are like smooth or not. So I'll just show you what normal looks like. At the top here, under click this little arrow next to these spheres, and if you go to matte cap and click the sphere, here's your normal. This blue pinkish color sphere, and if you click that, this is how light plays with your object. If you move around your screen, it changes how the light interacts with your object. So that's normals. I'm gonna go back to studio here. Okay. And there's a bunch of other stuff like emission and roughness for how shiny it is, and glossy. Glossy and roughness, they're basically the same thing. I don't know why they have them both. That's funny though. Emission right here, emit if you have lights on your mesh. So that's what it bakes it out. And in Unreal, you would take those maps, plug them into the master shader that it has in Unreal, connect it to your mesh, and then whatever look you got here would then display there in Unreal the same way. So that's the process of baking out your texture maps. It's a little bit more advanced. In fact, I would say baking textures is a very advanced process, and if you know how to do it, bravo. It's very, very, very strong to learn. To have that skill set, I mean, right there, that alone, baking procedural textures, is something you would get hired for. Like, that alone is a very, very important job in the gaming industry, and even in any industry that deals with graphics. So yeah, so we made our texture, we're happy with it, so let's move on to making something else. So hit 0, go into my camera mode. I want to bring a cube in. So I think I have other cubes made. I want to see what they look like. So I'm going to go into rendered mode. I'm going to turn on, let's see what I have. Let's turn this on. What is this? Oh, that's the base cube. I'm going to turn on this cube. Turn off that plane. And then I think this cube's in my plane. Yeah, so in wireframe, this tells me how, you just see the wireframe of every object. And so I'm going to go solid mode, bring that down right below the cube. Okay, cool. So there's my cube, and I think I have, if I select my cube, I go to materials here, and I have a list of materials I've made before. This is my cube material project, and so I'm just going to select one to see what it looks like, to see if I have something interesting to show you guys. Let's see what this one looks like. Gravity. I don't think it's going to do anything. Oh, it is something. So this little thing here is, if I go to, here it is. All right, here's the material build for this. So what's so cool about procedural shading is that it doesn't have to actually be a texture. It can actually be something completely different, like a volume. And so that's what this is. This is a volume. And what it is just like a black hole with, well, let's just take a look at this. So here we have vectors. So these are controlling the location of our volume here, which is this black sphere inside the box. Looks like a black hole. Yeah. And then with these combined XYZ values, we're having these separate integer values controlling the diameter and then the density of this sphere itself. And then we're combining this node group with this node group to, actually, I'm curious what each one is controlling. So let's change something here. Let's change this. I'm combining two spheres together. Okay. So this is the inner sphere that's very dense and black. Can't see through. And I believe this one here is controlling the outer sphere. That's less dense and you can see through it. So it's like the hazy cloud that's on the outer edge of it. So I'm combining two spheres together. And this is the node group for how that sphere is how that looks. Now I think if I hit tab, yeah, so when you see a node group, that means there's a bunch of nodes inside it. And if you select it and hit tab, it opens it up and you see the connection, the builds for that node. And so this is what's creating that sphere itself. This is the build for that outer sphere. And I think the same one for the bottom is going to look the same, yeah. So both spheres are together. They have the same build. And this is basically using a geometry position point subtracted from the position of all these other nodes, controlled with this color ramp. Yada yada. It gets very technical in nature when you dive into creating things that are out of the norm. And those two spheres are added together into a principled volume, and this is what's controlling the fact that it's not mesh, but it's actually something completely different. It's just like black space, right? That's what this principled volume is. It's a shape within a shape, and that's giving that the transparency on the edge of the box. So that's the gravity. Let me look at something easier to describe. Let's look at let's heat. Okay, so this one is not too hard to make. It looks crazy, but it really isn't that hard. So let's explain what's happening here. Let's start from what's coming into it. Actually, no, let's start over here. Let's start from the principled shader. So this is your original node, right? So I'm mixing that. I'm mixing the principled with an emission. And this emission is connected to a black body. And the black body is basically like temperature. And it's actually like real-time temperature. And so you can make this very high temperature or very low temperature. And so it changes the color here. And I think if I go like really, really high, it gets blue. I think that's how it works for sunlight, or the way stars work, or the way the fire works. Yeah, if it gets really hot, it actually gets blue. Right, okay, cool. So that's my black body, and it's being emitted at a strength of 26. So if I go down to 1, if I do a 1 strength, barely visible, 26, strong. I go really bright, there you go, you got really strong light. Now, what's making it work stronger on the bottom and it's like fading into this black on the top. I'll bring that down to 26 again. So this black on the top is actually the principal part. So if I change this, if I let's say make this roughness 0, bam, that's the top part. It's very metallic and it's very shiny. And then this emission part is the lower section. And it's being controlled, so these two shaders, the emission and the black top, is being controlled by this factor. And this factor is being controlled with a wave texture. This wave texture has this map texture coordinate connected to it. And what this does is, now when you want to create these two with Node Wrangler active, if you just select your wave texture and hit Control T, it creates those two nodes for you instantly connected. I'm going to delete those, I don't need those. And then I have that color ramp between the wave textures into the mix shader. Now, what's cool about this texture mapping is that you can control how the texture, the wave texture, is playing in your scene. So I had to rotate it on the Z-axis and the X-axis by 90 degrees, positive on X, negative 90 on Z, to make this thing have a wave texture that's shooting up. So if I rotated this back to 0 on the Z-axis, watch what happens. Oops. I want to do that slowly so you can see what happens. See, it's rotating it. And it's bringing it up to a vertical position. And now it's 0. It's completely vertical. So now it's going from this side that way to the left, from the right to left, the way we're looking at it. And if I bring that back down to negative 90, now it's from bottom to the top. So we rotated it along the Z-axis, and so we made sure that the wave texture is aiming up. The wave texture, I edited some of these options here. So on the scale of 0.1, I believe that's, let's see what happens if I up it. So we get lines, we get waves. That's the wave texture. But I only need 0.1 because I only wanted one wave. Now, I don't know why I used the wave texture for this. There is a simpler way of getting this look rather than using a wave texture, and that's simply going Control A, adding in a gradient texture. It would do the same thing. It may have to change these rotation values, but it literally do the same thing we're looking at here. I went about it an extra step so I can have more control if I wanted to add in more waves. And then this controls at what point the different the portion of the black and then the emission appear. So if I lower the black, we have more emission. If I get rid of, I don't think this changes anything. Yeah, so this only controls the emission part. If you want it the other way around, if you want more black and less light, I think if I flip this, no, it's not going to work that well because this rotation value here is controlling where it is. No, that's not it. Oh, it's the phase offset. That's what it is. Okay, so I have offsetted this wave texture from the origin point to be like, at this point, what you're looking at right now, the origin point of this wave texture is kind of like right here. So you can see it's fully emitted here, and then you see the line right there that's starting to fade out. And if I offset it, and it's at negative 10 right now, you'll see I can move the line itself. I can offset it. So if I want the origin point to be like right at the tip, or at the top of the box, that's where it is, and we can now control more of the black, or more of the white, or more of the light. All right, so then now we have that mix shader controlling those two. But what's all this other stuff here? Okay, so this is, we have the noise texture that's also coming out of this texture coordinate. So what texture coordinate does is the generated means that the object itself generates the texture, right? But then if you do object versus generated, the object, actually I said that the other way around, sorry. The object is, let's just plug it in, I'll show you how it works. So if you plug in the object to the wave texture, so this mapping is connected to the wave texture, and instead of generated, let's do object and see what changes on the screen. So it kind of gave me more of the emission part. So maybe I don't need the offset at this point. Yeah, so the offset's too strong. Um, Between generated and object, I usually prefer object on most of my meshes, specifically because if I made something that's complex in design, like it's like a robotic head or an organic, like a snake or something, it's better to use the object as the texture coordinate because when you're doing procedural shading, um, it'll read your mesh, the way all the polygons are structured, and it'll base it off of it. Generated, it does the same thing almost. I'm not too sure how strong it is in comparison. But usually I just play around with it. I usually plug in all of these and see what look I get. If I'm happy with one of the looks, I'll keep it. And when I get a look I'm really, really happy with, I'll just be like, okay, I want to bake that out and use that for, a game asset. And so I can bake out this cube the way it looks, the way this texture's playing, and if I put it on a cube inside Unreal Engine and with the texture maps connected, bam, I got my look just like this. So it kind of looks like an anvil dipped in fire or something, Okay. Whoa, what happened? Oh, okay. I clicked the floor, not the cube. Okay. So what's happening over here on this next mix shader is that we're mixing the first shader with a noise texture. So I think that's what's getting this like discoloration that's happening inside the light here. So you can see it looks kind of like clouds almost. It's not a very smooth transition, but it has like these, darker spots. So if I change the scale, you'll see it change as well. See? And so I'm going to take that back to its original form. If I didn't have this, let's put it 0, let's say I didn't have the noise texture, it'd be a very, very smooth transition of light. But I wanted to disrupt that because I wanted it to look like it's being heated at very different areas, different temperatures. So that's the noise texture controlling this shader. Now if I plug the noise texture into the shader, not the factor, it would actually change something completely different. Change the color. And I don't want to change the color. So this mix shader already has the color I'm looking for. So I just look at that one there. I'm happy with the coloring and the way the material is. But I want it to be, I want to add that noise, right? But I don't want to change the color. I want to change the factor because it controls the color. Or, I guess it says the same thing. So this changes the color, and this controls the color. The original color. Okay. And then I'm mixing that one with another one. So I didn't want to, so this is a layer weight for Nell. So this is controlling the way light plays on the edges, I believe. So let's see what happens if we mess with this. So I'm going to turn off my overlay. I don't like seeing that orange highlight. I turn that off. I'm also, personally, because I have a good computer, I'm going to up my samples to like 16. There we go. Oh, I'm also in cycles. I don't know why I'm in cycles. I'm going to go back to Eevee. Okay. Wow, that looks different. I don't know if I ever did. Yeah, I was in Eevee the whole time when I was doing these textures. See, look at the difference between. So this is Eevee, kind of stylized. This is cycles. More realistic. A lot more grainy though, because it is using a lot more processing power to get that realistic view. It depends on what look you want to go for. They do different things, and very important, the way shaders play in Cycles versus Eevee does differentiate. And I can show you guys that later. It has to do with this materials tab here and how the options at the bottom work. But I'm going to go back to Cycles. I mean, not Cycles, Eevee. Okay. And then let's see what happens, what this is doing with the box here. So I'm going to change this white value. Okay, so that's controlling the edge, like this vignette on the edge, bringing this black in. And this one's controlling the lightness on the other sides. And this number here also controls the amount. Okay. So I just used these for like extra effect. And I mix that together on the factor, not in the shader. If I do it in the shader, see what happens. Changes the color. We don't want that. Because this is, right now, why it's black and white, it's because using the color ramps colors, black and white. Put that in the mix shader. And then that's our output, and so that's how we got that look with these nodes. So now I'm going to go over real quick what these shaders do here on this list here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but just, you know, simplify it for you guys. So input, we have, let's see, these are, let's say ambient occlusion. We know what that is. Let's see what this looks like if we just look at the ambient occlusion. Okay, don't see much because it's just a cube. It doesn't have indents and corners and stuff. So if I just go into edit mode, I'll go to solid mode, select my cube, I'll turn on my overlay, select my cube. Let's let me go to the press 3 for face. I press I to insert or I think it's insert. No, inset, not insert. And press E for extrude. Make like a bolt. Yeah. Looks like a tub now. Go back into rendered mode. I was assuming that ambient occlusion would play a role here. Okay, so this is just giving the whole object ambient lighting, basically. Alright, let me bring this back to there. Well, let's see what happens. Oh, that's pretty cool. Let's check that out. It's because I edited the cube. Now it has like this. That's pretty cool. I'm glad I did that. So sometimes you like make perfect mistakes, you know, when you're just creating procedural shaders. Just change a few things, and then all of a sudden you have something amazing and totally different. But yeah, that's pretty cool how this works. So I don't really use much of the inputs here. There are a bunch of great options though. Like I do use Fresnel, but Fresnel is basically this layer weight, but you have an extra option here for facing, the way the faces play with the light. I also think I use light path. So what's cool about light path is that you can control what part of your mesh based on your, your textures, what part of it gets the light and what part doesn't get the light. So with this light path, you can like control reflections. Like you want something reflecting a light, but another part of it not reflecting light. This is how people in games create like a plane. Like for example, if you had a portal, right? So there's a plane inside the world, and it's a portal into another world. Like you're going through this doorway into another dimension. Let's say you're in a forest. You see this portal. It's like has this like Mars environment on the other side, and so this light path is the reason that you don't see that actual like portal playing with the light inside your environment of the forest. So it's like nighttime in the forest or daytime in the forest, and there's sunlight, but it's not that plane's not reflecting that sunlight. It's because this light path is like controlling how the light plays with that object specifically. So that's what light path does, and obviously other programs have different names for this, but it's basically the same kind of language. So if you know what you're looking for, you'll know how to find it. So yeah, input has a lot of other options. And we got output, material output, which we use right here. I have never used this AOV output, but I do know AOVs are in Maya, and that might be if you wanted to render out, like, let's say you wanted to render out a scene and you needed specific AOVs to edit them in like a compositor. Albeit that Blender itself does have a compositor up here at the top, compositing, which can do plenty, most of what you need to do to get through Cal State Fullerton, honestly. But yeah, so it has a compositor. Shaders, so this is our principled BSDF right here. That's our master shader, or the original one that we start with the base material. But you have other parts that like branch out from it. So inside principled, if I go to the principled over here, you have this emission part right here, an emission strength. So look at the black. Let's say we want the black to be emission 2. Up the blackness. Now it's emitting. Up the strength. Now it's strong. Bring it back down black. No emission. But if you go back to shader, you can create emission as its separate one. So if you wanted to use this to control, like right here, I wanted this to be mixed with this to make that bottom light. Obviously, you can't come out of this and go in here. Actually, technically you could. I'll show you how you do that. If you didn't want to use an emission node itself, you would just make another one of these and use the second one as an emission. You can just Shift D, duplicate it, and let's up the emission. Actually, you can just make the black body plug into this emission and make this strength 26, just like that emission node right there, and just plug this in instead of this emission. Put it in here. Bam. We got the same look. It's kind of funny. But this takes a lot more processing power for the computer to render out. So it's easier just to use the simple emission because you're going just for that look. That's funny though. It's yeah. When you're doing procedural shading, there are multiple ways to do the same thing. Honestly, it's I don't know what the phrase is. 1,000 ways to skin something. I don't know. Anyway, okay. So moving on, we're going to look at. So these are the other shaders. You have diffuse, emission, glass. So if you want to make glass, obviously, the principled BSDF, the original shader that you have, can do most of this stuff on its own. But if you needed just to use specific ones, you would go to the shader here and grab them. And this is where the mix shader is, though, because that's very important. That's how you get all these nice, neat looks. Textures. This is my favorite place to go when I want to make procedural shaders. I go to textures. I get all these and combine them in very different, unique ways. Just like grab a texture shader here. I'll plug this into the displacement. Boom. Let's see what happens. Bam. We got displaced checker. It looks kind of weird though. It looks stretched. So if I do a Control T, that's the node wrangler shortcut to make a texture coordinate. So this is, I think this is where the object versus generated comes in handy. Oh shoot. If you can't like get to your object quickly because it's spazzing out, just as long as you have the object selected, whether on their screen or in the outline, and you hit period on your num key. I don't think I hit period on, yeah, not that period. You do the one on the numpad. It takes you to the object. Oh, in case you didn't, I'm so sorry. In case if you guys are trying to figure out how to like move around the scenes, it's a hold middle mouse button, shift middle mouse button, scroll wheel, and that's that. I apologize if anyone was confused. So yeah, generated. This is the original way it looks, and it's kind of like you see these artifacts. And I'm assuming, and when I plug in the object, it's gonna change it. I'll still see artifacts though, probably because this thing is not modeled. Actually, it is properly modeled because they're only using quads. But let's see what happens. Object. Ah, look at that. It actually looks better. You do still see the artifacts though. That's basically what displacement does. If you that's because of yeah, I have a subdivision surface on this cube. If I turn that off, it kind of looks more blocky. That looks like a Minecraft like, I don't know. That looks, this reminds me of Minecraft. It's kind of dope. So yeah, this is what's causing that artifact. You actually, without it turned on, you see the artifacts. So artifacts are basically like little triangles or big triangles that you see displacing light. And that has to do with your normals, I believe. And if I went to rendered or solid mode, matte cap, and we're in our normals here. it looks fine to me. Everything's one color on each side. Maybe if I enter edit mode, select everything and hit shift N to recalculate normals. Obviously that probably didn't do anything because it should have been fine. This has to do with the displacement displacement node here. So let's go back into rendered mode. Yeah, so sometimes this happens. I personally don't know why. And usually when I hit this point, I'm like, okay, you know what? I don't like that look, so I'm just not going to go for it. I play around with these other object options here to see if I can fix it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it just doesn't. But then again, sometimes it actually works better than I thought, because what if I wanted this look? This looks kind of Tron, futuristic vibe in nature with these like triangles covering the plane, the top part of the box. But anyway, yeah, object, you saw it. You actually see the texture a lot better than when it's generated. It's kind of stretched. So yeah, that's texture. That's the checker texture, and then I can combine it. Like if I do, let's combine it with Voronoi. Let's have Voronoi be the controller of the checker. So I'm just gonna plug that in right here. So Voronoi is kind of like this flake, kind of like flakes. And if I just plug in the Voronoi alone, you'll see flakes. So these are flakes, or more like cracks or chips or whatever you want to call it. This is Voronoi. I love Voronoi. It's great. And when you plug in a different one here, distance, color, precision, they do different effects. So I think one of them is like very smooth. Let's see. Is it position? No, I think it's distance. Yeah, this one's a smooth one. I don't like that though. I think the color one looked great. Yeah, this looks great. Let's see what this looks like again. Okay, that just inverts it a little bit. Yeah. And so let's see. So if you control the checker texture with the Voronoi texture, this is the look you'd get. Let it update. That's the look you'd get. So you see the Voronoi, also the checkers together. So the Voronoi is actually combined with it. If you do it the other way around, so let's plug that in back here. If we do checker controls Voronoi, you can control the checker on top of the Voronoi. So see, look, the Voronoi is inside the checkers. This is the beauty of procedural shading. You get some very, very unique original work here that you can bake out onto a flat sheet. Call it your texture, whatever you want to call it. I'd call this mural, checkered murals, or I don't know. So yeah, that's the beauty of procedural shading. I'll just show you a few other examples I made in the past. So let's go to... Let's see what this one is. Let's see heart. Alright, that doesn't do anything. Yeah, so this project of mine, this was not created to be taught. It was just something personal I was doing on the side. But let's see what else we have here. Life. Alright, that's alright. That's cool. So I used a noise and emission shader to create this, controlled with color ramps. I don't have that connected, so I don't need that. I can change the color of the emission. Alright, that was that. Let's see. Let's go to space. Ah, this one was very impressive. Okay. This one took me a minute to make because as you can see, parts of it is see-through, and and then it has a star system inside, and it has like this nebula built in, and it changes based on your viewport. based on how you're looking at it. It changes. So this one was very, very awesome when I made it, and here's the node setup for it. I won't go through the whole thing, but this is what you can achieve with procedural shading, and it's just magnificent. It's amazing. And if I just want to change the color of it, play around with this stuff, it's pretty cool. And like I can control now. When you like want to make a, let's say you made a material, right? A procedural shader. They're basically called materials, and you wanted it to be like completely editable, like easily user friendly, so that someone who has it can like change the settings of it without having to go into this like giant tree, this mess of nodes, and like, you know, figure out what affects what. You can actually like click nodes, and if you press N as in Nancy, you can actually name the node itself. So you call this light color. And if I hit G, oh, not G. So that's the name. I didn't change it there. Oh, there we go. That one's the one that changed. So this is the emission. Oops. I hate misspelling things. Alright, so that's the emission, and then for the label I named it light color, so now it's called light color, and this is how you would change the color of the light. And so you can name this for them to like know what they're changing, and then also if things are too clustered and you have nodes, node trees can get very, very huge, especially when you're making something like very advanced and highly customizable. It can get like insanely huge, and it's just gonna cover your entire screen. You don't know what's where. What you can do is select only the nodes that you know change things. For example, I'm gonna combine this with that. So I'm just clicking those. So I'm just click that, shift click that, shift click this and this. I'm just shift clicking all the color ramps because those do change a lot of settings. And with those selected, with those nodes selected, you can press G. Or no, Shift G. Is it Shift G? Or Control G? I don't remember what it was. It was the way to group them. Ah, it was Control G. There it is. Okay, it was Control G. So what Control G is it groups them all into a node group. Now, with this node group, I believe you can go inside by hitting Tab and select each one. As long as you know which each one does, right? So let's say, let me change this one. Let's see what happens. All right, so this is changing. This is changing the strength of the nebula. Yeah, it's changing the transparency of the nebula. So I would just label this nebula. I'll just call it nebula, because that's all it is. It's just the nebula part. Maybe something else will change the nebula later, but if I tab out, it did not change it. There is something that does change it. I gotta figure out what it is. Because this one's called light color, but I don't see light color here. But there is a way to do it. Group. Outputs. Nope, that's not it. Options. No, no. I know there's a way to do this. I just never done it that often to know immediately. So I'm just going to let that be for now. You can always just Google it, and there is a way to change these names. But yeah, so that's how you would, like, you know, organize your scene so that if someone ever used your material and they wanted to change how this nebula inside the box looks, they would go to whatever option is here and change the options. They can go inside and change it. There is a way to make there is a way to bring all these options here, like this slider, this color, and this number here. There's a way to bring them into this portion right here. I don't know it yet, but that is a really cool function if you wanted to organize your material. So yeah, this is one of the cooler procedural shaders I made. Now, if I ever wanted to bake this out as a texture, I don't think it would work that well because it has a transparency that changes based on view. This is something you would have to rebuild, like say in Unreal or in Maya. You would have to definitely rebuild it. This is not something you could bake out. This is something that it can only work when you're in Blender if you're like making like a space scene and you have the ship fly through, like, or fly across your screen here, but not through it, because it would obviously change when you go through it. It's like a good background piece. Need some water. Okay, so the next part we have is, let's see, I just want to show you a couple more and then I think we'll be done. Let's see what rainbow is. That doesn't look too good. Radiation. Nope. Pixel colors. Ah, I remember this one. This one was a weird one. Any other ones I want to show? What's fog? Ah, fog. You can see it. It's actually just fog. I'm just going through the materials real quick just to see what I have if I want to show you guys anything else I made. Bubbles. Nope. Well, I think that's most everything for now. Yeah, that's about it. So you can make a lot of stuff with procedural shading, like wood, tree bark. You can make cloth. You can make bricks. You can make space nebula, fire and water, and all kinds of stuff you can make with this. So yeah, that's the power of procedural shading. And once you like practice how to use this stuff, you just play around with it, right? So sometimes when you play around with procedural shading, there is a chance it'll crash your system, or not your system, but it'll just crash Blender, right? And that's fine. Blender has an autosave feature, or you can just reload or make a new scene. It's no big deal. Play around with these nodes, connect them in different ways. This is how I went about learning how to do all this. I just played around with nodes and connected them in as many ways as I could. There are millions of ways to do it, infinite possibilities, and you eventually get a look you like, and you save it, and then either you can bake it out or use it in your scene, in your Blender scene, or even if you made it in another program like Maya or Unreal. Once you learn how to make procedural shaders, you can do a lot with it to just add a very, very interesting look to your objects. Obviously, there's a lot, there's a lot of nodes to learn, and it does get very mathematical, and especially when you're wanting it to like play along a certain way. Like, let's say you had a very snaky looking material object, and you wanted like this emission light to run as a ring through the snake line all the way through and following the curvature of the mesh. It uses a lot of math nodes and literally math node, like Shift A, search, math. Bam, there's a math node here, and you use all these options here to control the way the texture plays around with the object. So yeah, it is mathematical, technical, and but very, very creative, and honestly, it's very pretty too. And when you get looks that you really like, you gotta mess with it and get something you want. Yeah, that's the power of procedural shading, and I hope you guys liked it. And if you have questions, feel free to message me through the ACM SeaGraph Discord. Again, my name is Majid McClure, and yeah, thanks for having me.